Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. You're watching the Piedmont Trails channel, and it's Wednesday, September the 6th. We usually hold our live streams on Sundays, usually the last Sunday of each month. But September is special for Piedmont Trails because we're celebrating our birthday. We are 6 years young this month. So we're holding a special live stream at the end of this month concerning the colonial indentured servants. And we wanted to also include the Georgia migration routes from 1784 to 1790 because it came up in a previous live stream back in July, where many of you wanted to know more about the migration routes during this time period. So we decided to gather our notes, go through our files, and let us share our journey through all of our discoveries in Georgia through the migration routes with all of you. So that's what we decided to do. If you're new to the channel, my name is Carol. The live chat is up. I check it periodically whenever we do these live streams, and I'll read your comments. But please feel free to talk amongst yourselves and meet new friends and share your family stories and your history. And, it's a joint conversation, joining the journey together. And I will look up periodically and read and say hi to you, and you can ask questions. I don't pretend to be an expert in any of these topics. I'm only sharing my journey to the past with all of you. But I will help you the best way that I can. I will promise you that. I will help you. Some other news: Piedmont Trails had joined the main social media sites like YouTube, like we're on tonight. We're also on Facebook, Pinterest, and we just recently went back to Instagram. We're also on Spotify. You can find our podcast on Apple. Um, there are several different platforms for our podcast, and we're now starting to release video footage for our podcast on YouTube too. And that way, everybody's got if you have a favorite among your social media sites, that way you can pretty much find us and all of our social media content pretty easily. But we also highly recommend you guys to visit us on our website. It is piedmonttrails.com. That's piedmonttrails.com. And we'll be loading up tons of data and information from our Colonial Indentured Servants Project all throughout this month. This has been planned for the whole summer, but we're now at a point to where we're adding a lot of information to it. In fact, our new reference page and sources was just added this week on the website. So you can easily subscribe to our website and you will automatically receive updates from us as we add new material. It's free to sign up. All you need is your email address, and then you'll be receiving notifications that, hey, we've added such and such to the site, and you'll be the first to know. So we encourage everyone to pay us a visit on there and let us know how we're doing. We've got a contact form on there, so you can send us a direct message to us, and I will receive it. I get to see those too. So send your comments and suggestions to us. We would love to hear from you guys. Hi, Tyler. I see you in here. Excited to be here again. And hi, Scotty. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, let's get started. So, and like I said, just talk amongst yourselves. And this topic first came up in July, and a lot of the attendees who attended our July live stream were inquiring about the migration routes leading into Georgia after the American Revolutionary War. But tonight I want to start with the first one, and the first wagon road leading into Georgia, and that would be dates to 1698 when it first appeared. It first appeared as a horse trail or a walking trail, and Colonel Thomas Welch actually traveled this trail through present day Georgia, all the way through Alabama, and he reached the Mississippi River near a little community named Gunningson. That's Gunnison, in case I mispronounced it. That's Gunningson, Mississippi. And the road traveled all the way through Georgia. This road was used as a military route during Queen Anne's War. It was originally named for Thigpen's Trace, the man who actually came up with a plan to create a military route from the southern portions of Virginia, leading through the Carolinas into Spanish territory during that time. From this route, dating back to the late 17th century, like I said, Thomas Welch traveled it in 1698. He kept a journal of his account. I encourage you guys to look it up. He also, there are many notes about Colonel Thomas Welch too that you can find online easily. And it will also show, there are various maps that will show you the way this road traveled. This was the first. This road became a major trading route years later and was also, from my opinion, through Piedmont Trails, it's the first wagon road that traveled any long distance in Georgia. It's also the first wagon road that we could find for North Carolina. So it's Thigpen's Trace. And like I said, it traveled all the way to the Mississippi. I wanted to share a map for you guys, and I want you to, it's by John Mitchell. John Mitchell was not your normal guy who created maps, okay? I think he created, two come to mind that he created. His map of Virginia, really basically of the colonies, but particularly in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. John Mitchell is one of my favorites because his map dating from 1750, he goes into detail like what we, his family historians, love. You can find his 1750/1756 version of his map online. You can zoom it in. Just Google that or punching into your browser search of John Mitchell map 1750, 1755. There were two versions of this map, but John Mitchell was actually a physician. He was a doctor by trade. And he studied plants and he studied wildlife and he paid attention to the landscapes and he knew where the native tribes were. And he relied on them a lot for his herbs and medicinal purposes for his trade. He created one of the, I find, the most fascinating maps of Georgia that there is. And on this map, he gives details of the roads during this particular time period. And these are all trading routes. He was not hired. Here's another important thing. John Mitchell wasn't hired to create this map. And he did this out of his own free will. Now, there's a couple things I want to say about 18th century maps really quick. You know, today, in today's time period, we have politics that intertwine with other daily activities, and this was no different in the colonial period. And maps played a major, major role in this. Certain people who were required or hired to create maps did not necessarily create the boundaries where they were originally were. We find discrepancies with this all the time, especially with the Great Wagon Road Project. And this is nothing new to me. But for family historians out there researching it, it could be a shock. You may find a map and you don't understand why are the boundaries here, or why is this specific creek or waterway here. It's nothing near that. You know, John Mitchell was not in this group. He created this map out of his own free will. He was not hired to do it. And that's the other thing that makes him particularly a favorite of mine, because he paid attention to other details such as roads, such as the waterways, where the native tribes were located and who they were, such as the landscape. There was a huge swamp in this area. There was a waterway here, a waterfall here. He paid close attention to that. So I urge you guys to look up his map. You can easily find it online. Very, very good. I love it. I love it. Now, the minute that John Mitchell's map was published, and it was published in London, people screamed at all the mistakes. Oh, he was wrong here and he was wrong there. And so he came out with another version of it in 1756. And nothing, it was basically really didn't change. And I have two copies here. I have a copy of the 1750 and a copy of the 1756 version here. And whenever I'm working in the Georgia area, I can't tell you how many times I've referred to those maps for research. He just gives an uncompromised detail, and that's what we're after. That's what all of us are after. But Thigpen's Trace is later known as the Trading Path. So when any Georgia early map that you pull up, you're going to see Trading Path. You'll see some references. I think Thomas Kitchen on several of his maps goes into the lower trading path, or the upper trading path, or the old trading path. These were all trading paths, every one of them. They were all trading paths. Other maps dating to the late 18th century portray many different trading routes. Here's another map for you to look at. John Hinton, that is Hinton, John Hinton, published 1779 in London. And he shows all of these trading paths. Hinton stopped his map. Hinton stopped his map at the boundary of the Muskogee Nation. He didn't go any further than that. Mitchell does. By 1780, there were many, many roads in Georgia. So John Hinton's map was outdated when it was published, because by 1780, Georgia was growing. People were coming from everywhere to come to Georgia, and they came especially after the American Revolutionary War. So the roads tripled. I want to say, how many roads were there? They tripled. They definitely tripled in Georgia during this time frame. But Hinton points out some very interesting characteristics, and you can find his map online too. It's John Hinton, Hinton, 1779. He shows 5 roads leading out of Augusta in 1779. He shows 4 roads that lead out of Athens. Okay. He shows 5 roads that travel through the Sparta area. He shows 5 roads that go through Milledgeville. Am I saying that right, you guys? I always get tongue-tied on that one. 4 roads travel through the Clinton area. This is in 1779. 5 roads travel through the Dublin area. And then he's got 3 roads, just 3 roads that travel through Savannah area. Hi, Bonnie. Welcome to the live stream. I'll jump up and look at y'all's comments when I get a chance every now and then. Thank you for joining us, Bonnie. Today we're trying to place, here's one thing that I went to a site last night when I was thinking about this live stream, and I said, I just want to see how many different names of roads I come up with in Georgia during the 18th century. I came up with a site that named 20 different roads. And so I said, this is pretty interesting. So I'm going to click on a couple of these. When you clicked on them, no other information was given. They just gave you a name. They didn't give you any history. In some points, they gave you a direction or a location. But outside of any proof or documentation or references, nothing. And I was just surprised and overwhelmed at how many people try to name or attach a name to colonial roads. One of the hardest lessons that I had to learn many years ago was when trying to trace the footsteps of my family and attaching their footsteps to a road and call it what I felt like it needed, what the name of the road was. Don't try to limit yourself to naming these roads, because our ancestors did not name these roads. They did not have names. Years later, such as more longer distant routes like the Kiowee Trail, most people called it the Kiowee Trail, or they did call it the Trader's Path. But the list of 20 some routes, which I printed them out and I'm going to name them to you guys that I found, and I'm going to give you my opinion on each one. They did not have names. People went by the location or where the road traveled to. Say like the southern route leading from Athens, or the road that traveled to Dublin. That's what they called them. They called them for where they traveled. They did not have a name. So don't try and limit yourself on trying to research and searching for that name, because when you do, you're going to find yourself in a big mess of all kinds of paperwork and trouble. That's the best advice I can give you, is to just research the immediate area and learn about that, and then branch yourself out. The roads will come to you, and then you will learn. You'll see through clues and hints of how your ancestor traveled in. But don't try and go and search for the name. Here's another good one: Federal Road. The Federal Road was used after 1800. And it's the term Federal Road that gets me. Most of the early states after the American Revolutionary War, they all had major roads that they developed right after the war. They were used as postal routes, stagecoach routes, and military routes. They were deemed the term Federal Road. Well, Georgia had a Federal Road too. These were all mainly toll roads too, not necessarily migration routes. Now, although families, through the Great Wagon Road Project, we have found families that did use toll roads. Carolina Road was a toll road. But majority of families, once it became a toll road, they found another route. Other routes became more popular rather than the toll roads. Most of the roads, like I said, most of them were toll roads. Here's another toll road, Georgia Road. Someone had mentioned, as I was thinking about through the July live stream, they brought in that they had made a comment with my family. I know my family traveled down the Georgia Road. Well, that tells me that they traveled by wagon down the Georgia Road after about 1804, 1805. I don't know what their timeline was, but that's when the Georgia Road was a wagon road, when it could accommodate a wagon. Before then, no. These roads did not exist until after 1800. Before that, they were still the original trading routes. They were still horse trails. They were walking trails. Before 1830, these were the original trading routes, and in the most case were the Federal Road and Georgia Road that led to the Cherokee. It led to the Creeks, their communities. Led to further north into Shawnee communities. That's what these were. They did not accommodate a wagon. Now, I'm not going to say that families didn't travel down the roads. They could with a small cart, or or if they were walking or they were going by horseback. Absolutely, they can make the trip easily on that route, not with a wagon. So getting your timeline down is critical. So during the years of 1784 to 1790, the concentrated most popular point of entry into Georgia was Augusta. It was Augusta, and no doubt. If you have families who settled north of Augusta, then you did have access to the Kiowee Trail, which was portions of northwestern South Carolina that could accommodate a wagon, and it could lead you into the northern sections of Georgia, north of Augusta. But the most popular entryway into Georgia was through where the old Fort Moore site was located in Augusta, according to my research. After 1790, roads emerged from the older routes, such as Thigpen's Trace. So if you study your family's area where they settled, then you can follow the roads as they are formed through various timelines. Georgia was still really small during this period compared to the other colonies. They were still small in size, they were small in population, They were in settlements and communities. Georgia was still small. Georgia didn't really branch out and become the Georgia we know today until after 1830. Although they had a huge growth spurt that we can see in records dating after the American Revolutionary War. This is from people who were coming in, they're claiming their pension lands. These are also people that are coming in for new opportunities, new dreams. They've heard about Georgia, now they're going to travel into it for the land. But it's not until after the Indian Removal Act of 1830 when Georgia really opens up and really grows then. What was it, 21 million acres of land from that act? So if you want to look into how Georgia really grew and how the roads came about, it's not until after 1800. If you want to learn more about it, check out the Treaty of Fort Jackson in 1814, or research the areas that were greatly affected during the Creek War, 1813 to 1814. Or look into the discovery of gold in the mountains of northern Georgia in 1829. That changed everything. And then you can see the Indian Removal Act of 1830, where it forced all the natives who were living in the area to Oklahoma, the Trail of Tears. That's when 21 million acres of land in Georgia opened up for settlement. Prior to that, Georgia was still fairly small. Another thing to remember is the British and the Spanish, the powers that were still dwelling in Florida, which is not that far from Georgia. And due to their presence, much of southern Georgia remained unsettled. And that's obvious through the records. I mean, you can find a few traders that are living here and there. They're going back and forth with forts, with supplies. There are a few trading paths, but you do not see settlements or communities. They're not there. You see a few forts, but you don't see the communities. The communities are all within the eastern sections of Georgia. They're lining up Savannah. They're going up to Old Ebenezer. They're in Augusta. They're traveling along that way. And then eventually they go to the west. Families traveling into Georgia during this time period of 1784 to 1790, they're settling in Burke County. These would be your early records: Camden County, Chatham, Effingham, Glenn, Liberty, Richmond with Augusta, and then Wilkes counties. The roads more than tripled after these counties were formed. All right, let me get to some of these roads. I'm going to look up and let's see. Tyler, also the Georgia Land Lottery, but it did bring in a lot of people. Let's read in Bonnie's comment here. Oh, so they were having a squabble over the land. Yeah, land was, a lot of people ask me, well, what enticed people to originally migrate south during the mid 18th century? It was, land was part of it, but there were a lot of other reasons involved in it too. But when it comes to Georgia and it's after the American Revolutionary War, it's land that I have found. Land. Okay. So let me know if you guys have ever heard of some of these trails and these roads. First one is Augusta and Cherokee Trail. This was one of the roads that were named on this particular website that had 20 some different colonial roads in Georgia. Augusta and Cherokee Trail. This was actually part of the Kiowa Trail, and it dates to 1709, originating in South Carolina. What about Augusta and St. Augustine Trail? This was actually what we call in road research as a shootout. A shootout is a road that shoots out from a primary road and forms into a new road. Well, this is a shootout from Queen Anne's War. This is an old route that leads into St. Augustine. It was a planned attack during Queen Anne's War for North Carolina's, a lot of their military groups, and from South Carolina to come in and attack St. Augustine. It was a failed attack, by the way. But this actual trail was a shootout from Thigpen's original trace. Augusta and Savannah Trail. How many of you guys have heard of it? Augusta and Savannah Trail. This was actually road that was made by the Oglethorpe group during the 1730 decade. It traveled from Savannah to Augusta. It was a road. And a road is something we classify, it has to accommodate a wagon. If we don't call it a road, then it's a path or it's a horse trail. What about Charleston and Fort Charlotte Trail? Fort Charlotte was another point of entry that we have found for Georgia along the Kiowee Trail. But what about Charleston and Fort Charlotte Trail? Well, this is a trading route, and this is a military route, and it's paralleling portions of the Kiowee Trail going in and out, in and out. It's part of it. It's part of the Kiowee Trail. Charleston Savannah Trail. Now, I clicked on that, and they said, well, this is part of the King's Highway. Well, the King's Highway stopped at Savannah. The King's Highway didn't go any further. It stopped at Savannah. It ended there. It wasn't until, and then the King's Highway is pretty much non-existent in the following years, especially after the American Revolutionary War. But the King's Highway actually ended at Savannah. Sitka and St. Augustine Trail. This was another shootout from the original Thigpen's trace. And I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I'm going to spell it. Coosa, Coosa, Coosa / Tugaloo, Tugaloo, Indian Warpath. This road is actually the New River Road that travels into western sections of North Carolina and on into Tennessee, and it joins in with the Seven Islands Road there in Tennessee. Fall Line Road. Well, Fall Line Road is just another name for Trader's Path, or the original Thigpen's trace. Traveled from Petersburg, Virginia, all the way into Augusta and past to the Mississippi River. Federal Horse Path. Federal Horse Path was to the Chattahoochee River from Fort Stoddard, okay, and it also connected Fort Wilkinson. It did not emerge until 1790. That's because that's when Fort Stoddard came into being. So Federal Horse Path was non-existent until 1790 decade. Georgia Road, that was a toll road dated 1805, traveled from Nashville, Tennessee to Vans Ferry. How many of you guys have heard about Vans Ferry in Athens, in the Athens area? What about Fort Charlotte and Cherokee Old Path? This was a name that they had on their site. Well, that's part of the Kiowee Trail. What about Fort Moore Charleston Trail? Well, this is the South Carolina trading route that comes from Charleston, and it's the Kiowee Trail. Great Valley Road leading into Georgia. This is just another name for the Great Wagon Road, and we've proven with the project it did not travel to Georgia. Great Wagon Road stopped in North Carolina. The Trader's Path traveled to Georgia, but not the Great Wagon Road. King's Highway, it did not travel past Savannah. Lower Cherokee Traders Path. This was a trading path to the Catawba Nation. It did not have anything to do with the Cherokee after I located it on their map that I went on their website. This was just a shootout from the Kiowee Trail. It was a trading path. In between the villages and communities, this accommodated mainly the Catawba Nation that was living in South Carolina. Lower Creek Trading Path. This is a shootout from Thigpen's trace as that trading path traveled through Georgia, visiting the creek villages. Macon and Montgomery Trail. The Macon and Montgomery Trail is part of the original Thigpen's trace on portions of it. It did not exist in the 18th century. It was not till after 1800. but it was a major migration route going through the central portion of Georgia, leading into Alabama. Middle Creek Trading Path, again, this is part of Thigpen's Trace. Occoneechee Path, the Occoneechee Path that we see prevalent in North Carolina did not travel into Georgia. The Occoneechee Path did not reach Georgia. Old Cherokee Path. This here again, even though they've named it Old Cherokee Path, this is still the New River Road. It's traveling through the western sections of North Carolina, leading into the Seven Islands Road that leads into Tennessee. Savannah-Jacksonville Trail. This is just another shootout from Thigpen's Trace, military route. And a Unicoi Trail. Unicoi Trail is a toll road. It's a toll road in 1819. Wagons could not make that trip until after 1800. And very few wagons traveled it then. It traveled from Kentucky to northern Georgia. It wasn't until after around 1819 maybe to 1825 when it became more popular. And then after 1830, it was very popular. A lot of families used it after that. Okay. I'm just reading your comment, Bonnie. That's fascinating. Have you said that you were researching as your fourth great grandfather, and have you found anything more to add to that in Franklin, Georgia, or were you able to confirm that that's where he was living? That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that with me. Okay, what do you guys think about all of this? Are you shocked? Are you confused? Do you disagree? Tell me what you think. And we always leave our live videos up for later viewing, so people that couldn't join us live can always go back and view our live streams. And I see the comments that come on there later, and and I think during this time period, the point of entry would have been on the eastern side of Georgia, in between between Augusta and more going north to the Kiowee Trail. That would have been your 2 points of main entrance into Georgia, unless they sailed, which was still pretty popular right after the war, and they could have easily sailed down the coast from Charleston into the Savannah port. But then it wouldn't have made much sense for them to do that, because most families would have ended up having to travel north from that point past Augusta anyway, and then traveling out from that point. So Augusta was your most popular entry until later. And then, after the beginning of the 19th century, then you had tons of roads coming from everywhere, and they traveled from everywhere to get to Georgia because of the land availability that was soon coming into being. All right. I wanted to, if you guys would like to learn more about how I research a particular local area, then let me know. I don't research like regular, normal research techniques. I'm a groundwork person. I start on the ground first, and some of my techniques allow me to view a particular local area differently. So I look for records in a different way, and I look for different types of records. This leads me down totally different trails than what normal genealogy, or not normal, but just most popular genealogy tactics do today. Most people begin online. What we have found, and I've just never done that. I've just always been a ground person. But if you'd like to learn more about how I do research a particular area, just let me know. I'd be happy to share how I do that with you guys. I'll be happy to share that. I get in touch with a lot of different people on the ground because the local people know the history the best. And I found that out a long time ago. And that comes with any timeline, it doesn't matter. You're going to find somebody in that immediate area who is very fluent and knows where the records are and may not always share that information. When I first got started in genealogy, there were a lot of family historians who were reluctant. They were very reluctant in sharing any of their sources or how they found this or how they found that. It was a secret. And I've never been that way. I've always wanted to just share what I discovered. That's how I got involved with Roots Web way back in the day. But I used the same techniques that I used back then. And I would get in touch with different types of people on the ground. And then they would lead me to other people. And this is how I really conduct all of my research. But if you'd like to learn more about it, just let me know. You can contact me here, or you can get in touch with us on the website, and we'll go from there. I'll be happy to share that. Let's see, Scotty. Unless you traveled. Yes, they did. Um, there was a lot of prevalent battles that took place in Georgia, especially during the American Revolutionary War, and there was a couple that I can name for the French and Indian War. Yep. So, but it was always through the eastern sections of Georgia. Georgia was small, very small. It was very small. All right, you guys, I'm gonna let it go at that. We're wrapping it up pretty early. I want to thank you, during the American Revolution. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me and helping me celebrate the birthday of Piedmont Trails. We are 6 years young, and we are so looking forward to the years ahead. Our next live stream will be September the 24th at 7:30 p.m. Please plan for approximately 1 hour for this live stream. If you're really, really interested in the Colonial Indentured Servants Project, we're going to be sharing a lot of our research, references and resources, a lot of names, a lot of information from Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. That's the three we're going to concentrate on for the live stream. We are going to continuously load up data and information on the website this whole month, so be looking for that. But our next live stream will be at 7:30 September 24th, right here on the Piedmont Trails channel. It's all about colonial indentured servants. And that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And like I said, if you have questions or comments, you can always leave them at the end of the live stream. We'd always leave those up for you to view later. Enjoy your journey to the past. And may God bless.